Okay, hi everyone. This is going to be a quick video around how to build out some logic that I needed in a Nintex Workflow Cloud workflow. Now, this is our Nintex Workflow Cloud environment where you can come and build workflows and have them interact with a bunch of different systems. What I actually wanted to do is have a workflow run when a new account is created inside Salesforce. So this is going to be a fairly sort of simple workflow, but just to give you guys an idea of what you can do and kind of how I went about doing it. So the first thing is, of course, under connections, this is where you need to create your connection to your Salesforce org. Right now I've created a number here of different ones, but here is the salesforce.org, salesforce.com org one that I'll be using. Now, once you've created that connection and you have it there, you can then click on create a workflow, and this will bring up the workflow designer. So the first thing you want to do is capture the event that something happened in Salesforce. In this case, an account got created. So I'm going to click up here, click on the start event. This brings up the start event configuration. I'm going to then click on Salesforce, click on new record. So that's the event that I want to capture. I then select which connection do I want to use. So that's the one I want to use there, the salesforce.com org one. And then you'll be, after it actually goes and queries that Salesforce org, it comes back with all the different objects. Now in this case, I'm just going to keep it simple. I'm going to say account. Now there are a number of different fields that I'm going to get back here, get back from the account, and you'll see here there's quite a few here. I'm going to grab a bunch here, but what I'm going to do is, instead of just going and configuring this workflow one by one, showing you exactly how to kind of build it out from scratch, I'm going to go to a workflow that I've built, and that way I'll be able to show you all the different fields that I'm using and all the different variables. But if you want to add, get these pieces of information and add them as variables, you can just simply do things like get the account ID, get the account name. Notice how these are being created in here, and then maybe even get, let's go here and, oops, where was I going to go? Annual revenue. And then you might also be interested in knowing who created this particular account. So you can do the created by ID, right? So all these things you can get from here. Okay, now let's actually jump to this environment here. So this is a workflow that I created earlier. So I'm going to click on the start event again and show you the values I'm getting back. So as you saw from before, the created by ID, account revenue, and account name. I'm also getting last modified date, but you'll see the little trash can over here on the right. That's basically just telling me that although I'm getting this and storing that value in this variable, I'm actually not using it in my workflow at the moment. So I might use that something, for a later day. All right. So everything else configured exactly the way I was showing you before. Now, here are some of the things that I'm doing at the very beginning. I'm using this, let's actually close that, and I'll show you, the action I'm using here is called the Salesforce Retrieve a Record action. So when I click on this, you'll see on the right here, it actually says Retrieve a Record right there. I've relabeled this because this is just telling me what I'm actually doing here. So I'm using the same Salesforce connection, but this time I'm actually querying for a user object. And where my filter is based on the created by ID that I received from that start event. So I'm getting the user that created this particular account. Now these are the three fields I'm getting back. I'm getting their email address, I'm getting their first name, and I'm also getting their manager ID. Now what I'm doing in this action is actually logging some of that data to the workflow history, right? To the workflow instance history. Okay. Now the next thing is I have this run if true action. This is just checking to make sure if the text manager ID, which basically is the manager of the initiator, if it's not empty, then we want to do another retrieve a record action. Same thing, get a user, but now I'm getting the manager's information. So in this case, I'm getting the email address of the manager and the first name of the manager. So really, after these few actions, I now have the initiator's first name, the initiator's email address, and their manager, if they have one, their manager's email address and first name. Okay, so let's have a look at what is this workflow doing. So first we have this action here, which is doing a check to see if that annual revenue property for the new account is equal to 0. If it is, then we're going to build some logic into this workflow to then go and notify somebody to say, we can't have an account with an annual revenue of 0. Please go and update that particular piece of information in Salesforce. All right. So if it is equal to 0, the first thing we do is we send an email. We're sending an email to the initiator's email address, and then we've set subject to update account annual revenue. We are using the pieces of data that we got from the query or the retrieve data action, or the retrieve a record action. And then we're saying, hi, first name, the account that was, spelling mistake, created was missing the annual revenue. Please update it. And we're giving them the account name and the account ID. Now, as I kind of play around with this a little bit more, I'll figure out a way of actually getting the URL back to that account. That way, in the email, I'll just have a link directly to that account rather than necessarily going to Salesforce and doing a search for that account name or account ID. Okay. Now, letting somebody know that they have to go and do something is not necessarily going to make them actually do it. So what we're going to do is we're going to use this loop or start a loop action. And in here, let's click in variables. We have a variable called bool continue loop. So this is just saying I'm going to have a yes no variable, a boolean variable. Its default value is yes, so that when we come in here, we'll say continue looping while that variable is set to yes. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to jump in here. We're going to do another retrieve a record. We're going to get that specific account, and we're going to pull out the annual revenue. Right? If the annual revenue does not equal to 0, right? So which means somebody's gone and actually updated it. Then we go down here, we log the information. So we're going to log account revenue updated, and we're going to log the actual revenue amount. And then we're going to set a variable value action, tell that continue loop action to no, which basically means it's going to come back around to the top here. It's going to evaluate to no, and we're going to jump out of this loop. I'm going to continue on with this workflow. If the account revenue is still set to 0, then we're going to go down the no branch. And in here we have a pause for duration action, and we're going to do a wait for 5 minutes. Right? So let's have a look at what happens when somebody goes and actually creates an account. Here is an example of a running workflow, and you'll see here we have done the get initiator's first name, email, and manager. We have logged some information, and here we've got the email address and the first name of the person who created the account and the account revenue, or the annual revenue, which is 0. We then go and check the manager's email and first name. Again, once we do that, using that retrieve a record action, we log that information. So Homer's manager is Marge. So we've got Marge, and we've got Marge's email address right there. Then we send off that email to Homer, letting him know that he has to go and update the account. And again, we're going to go through a particular loop. If I actually refresh this, you'll probably see a few more things in here in a moment. They see it's done that a few times, and you can see here 158, 5 minutes later is 203, 5 minutes later is 208, etc. So what I'm going to do is on a different screen here, I'm actually going to go into my account, and I'm going to change the annual revenue to something else. So I'm going to change it to say 50,000. So bear with me while I do that over here. And then what we'll see is within a few minutes, it's going to go and jump out of this particular workflow. So you can see at the top here, the status is still considered running. So we're going to actually make sure that this actually exits out. All right, let's give it a bit of a pause and see how it goes in a couple of minutes. All right, so I've just refreshed. It's been 5 minutes. You can see the retriever record is now running, which means it's going querying Salesforce for that particular account. And then let's see how we go after we refresh. There we go. It's retrieved it. We've logged some information, so you can see the account revenue is updated to 50,000. And then we tell the loop to exit. That's completed, and you look up here, the status of the workflow is now completed. So you can see pretty straightforward how to kind of build out this type of logic. And of course, as you start building out your workflows, they of course are going to be way more complex than this. But this is just to show you how it's quite easy, to get the information that you need. Now you'll notice this kind of logic in here I really didn't need the log actions. I didn't really need the run if. If you guys have a policy where your users in Salesforce, they always have some sort of manager field, then you don't really need the run if or the run if true action. You can just have these two actions in here, the get initiator's first name, email, and manager, and get manager's email and first name, and now you have all that data there. So you can really reduce the size of this workflow. I've added these log actions, and that's really primarily for me to debug my workflow and make sure it's actually doing what it's doing. Okay, hope this helps you guys out and gets you excited about some of the things you can do around Nintex Workflow Cloud. Now, I know this has been primarily focused around Salesforce, but of course there are other systems you can talk to with Nintex Workflow Cloud. So we are always interested in hearing about what kind of other workflows you guys are building out. So thanks for your time, and if you have any questions, feel free to add any comments to the bottom of this blog post or this video on YouTube. Thank you.